And welcome to the program, Charles Moscowitz, Monday through Friday, live streaming. This is a special edition at 2 p.m. I usually do the program 12 noon. And Michael D. Shaw is with us, as is our habit, every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Mike, thanks for joining me.
Always a pleasure.
So, Mike, I think we obviously have to talk about what happened with regard to the program last week. We talked about the virus, and we spoke about the vaccine, and apparently either you or I or both of us made some kind of an observation or controversial statement which led the live stream to be suspended from YouTube. So we're not on YouTube right now. YouTube did not take down my station. All of my videos are still there. And by the way, I have them all in storage. So, if something happens, I'll still have everything.
Did they ever tell you what it was we said that?
No, they didn't tell me what we said. And by the way, the suspension is supposed to be lifted tomorrow, is what they're telling me. But I kind of know what we said that was controversial. And that is the issue of possible negative effects of the vaccine on young women of a fertile age. This research is very controversial. We're not saying, I don't think either one of us said that we shouldn't, we're not recommending that people don't have the vaccine. In fact, members of my family have had it and they're fine. At least they seem fine. Of course, none of them are young women, at least not yet. I'll probably have it because I want to get back to doing certain things that I probably should have the vaccine to do. Of course, I'm an old guy, so, I'll be dead in 20 years probably. But
the CDC website itself, it makes the statement that they have insufficient information as to the safety of the vaccine for pregnant or lactating women.
Yeah, well, that's apparently a no-no for YouTube. We can't say that.
Well, I guess they should cancel the CDC also.
Well, it's interesting you say that because Steve Turley, you follow him. Yeah. He's been on my show. Yeah. He's been a regular. He was on a guest on a pretty large radio program, one that he doesn't even mention on his YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And the host told him that his program has been banned by YouTube. Now, this is, a radio program that is regulated by the FCC. So they maintain standards. I'm a former radio talk show host, and I understand community standards as defined by the FCC. Plus I generally understand what's permissible. When you go into a radio station, there's usually an owner or a manager sitting down the hall in an office.
Yeah.
You've got board ops, you've got salespeople, you have to interact with people. You don't just go in there and shoot your mouth off. You have to maintain certain areas, and you have to do a certain degree of self-censorship. There's a general professional understanding of what's permissible and what isn't, and I observe that. But that's not what we're talking about. YouTube obviously, this guy who they banned, he's on a radio station. So they have their own little internal means of censoring information, and I think it's a combination of their algorithm, which picks up on certain words, and also probably a core of somewhat radical people who don't want to have certain subjects discussed. Now, the nature of those subjects is not clear, but there's obviously a couple of landmines when it comes to YouTube, and one of them is the virus. If you criticize the virus, if you criticize...
Well, I'm against the virus.
You know what I mean. You criticize you criticize, the lockdowns, and you criticize the mask, and you criticize anything to do with the official party line on that, you're going to get taken down. You're going to get taken down if you talk about the election. You can't, I wouldn't have Sidney Powell on this program, for example, on YouTube. I certainly would have her on my other venues. Yeah. But you cannot criticize the last election. You just can't. So that's where YouTube is. And I think that going forward, I'm probably going to just post programs on YouTube by, kind of authors. I often interview authors
Or cooking shows, stuff.
Yeah, well, I don't go that far, but I'm not going to do, I have on controversial authors, but they're not going to get into those hot buttons. It's mainly, we talk about history. I mean, I don't think they'd ban me for saying that, Pearl Harbor was a plot. Maybe they would. I don't know. But the other thing is, it has more to do with things that are going on right now.
Yeah.
And so, thus, I am doing this program here. And what I'm probably going to do is put up a brief presentation on YouTube once I'm back up and running, simply telling people that I've interviewed you on these other venues and that they can go to those other venues if they want to hear the show. Now, since this incident, I have revitalized and refurbished my WordPress website, charlesmoscowitz.com.
Oh.
And I have put on that website a link to something called About Charles Moscowitz Live. And that links to something like 30 different venues that carry the show. I'm also have on that website my archives. I'm doing a daily blog, which is on that website. And I've got all sorts of other fun things. I mean, links to all sorts of stuff. And I'm trying to make a few dollars on the side, by the way. I don't get paid for this. I'm not well-to-do. And thus, I've linked up a bunch of products that you can purchase if you go to that website, including Mike Lindell. Talk about being banned.
The pillow guy.
Yeah, the pillow guy, My Pillow. You can get My Pillow on my website, charlesmoscowitz.com. Mike Lindell has been banned from not only him personally, but the My Pillow company, which is a big employer in Minnesota. They have been banned from social network. He's been banned from his big box stores that carried the product, like Kohl's and Bed Bath & Beyond. And it's all because he has come out and said that he believes that the election was stolen. Apparently, this is such a taboo for the controllers today that you cannot question this last election anymore. They'll call you a quote unquote conspiracy theorist.
I see.
As if there's something wrong with conspiracy theory. Never mind the fact that their conspiracy theory was that Donald Trump was a spy for Russia and that he colluded with Putin to steal the 2016 election. Never mind that. Or this completely cockamamie thing that Trump sought to overthrow the government on January 6th by sending in the guy with the buffalo hat. I mean, I saw an interesting phrase for this on, I think it was Mark Dice, who's one of the few people that's actually left on YouTube. He's huge, but I think he's talked about the problems he's having, where he calls it the blue anon.
Oh yeah.
Right? Yeah. I mean, these are the blue anon theories. Trump spying for Russia, these crazy, crappy, conspiracy theories that they push. So if you're pushing those theories, you're fine on YouTube. So next time somebody calls you a conspiracy theorist, if you're listening to the show, just say, hey, I'll see your conspiracy theory and I'll raise you one.
Yeah, well, the woke mob, especially at YouTube, went out of control months ago when they canceled the U.S. Senate during that hearing in which Dr. Pierre Corey was speaking in favor of ivermectin. And in fact, that video was up for a few days, garnered over 1 million views, and the U.S. Senate, I guess, was canceled. But in the funniest woke mob incident recently, an oil and gas company, I think in Colorado, wanted to go to North Face, the clothing manufacturer, and buy 300 jackets emblazoned with the name of their company. Mm-hmm. And the response they got was, I'm sorry, we don't support oil and gas and drilling and so on. And then, of course, the response was, well, that's very interesting, considering that 110% of your products derive from petroleum. Of course,
and by the way, try turning on your light this morning. Yeah. Try turning on the heater.
I mean, the ignorance is really amazing. I mean, going back many years, when I was in LA, and I had some good customers in the power industry. We were at some social event, and some woman said, it's really terrible. They really ought to shut down these power plants. And at first I thought she was just kidding, but she was serious. And I said, well, where do you think you're going to get your electricity? Well, just plug it in. She was dead serious. Dead serious. It's something that grows in the wall.
Yeah, it just sort of magically happens. It's like they believe in magic,
Well, it is magic.
And they're magical thinkers, basically.
So the ignorance is definitely out there, and I don't really understand completely what they're trying to accomplish, because when you start getting to the point where you're canceling Dumbo and other movies, it'll never end. In fact, the University of Texas donors that were up in arms, they were going to try to ban the song "The Eyes of Texas," and one guy who gives a lot of money said, "No, I'm not going to give another cent if you go that way, because understand that if you give in here, that's just the beginning. There's going to be more and more and more and more."
Well, that's right. I mean, once they take down Dr. Seuss, and by the way, I'm proud of the New York Public Library for saying no to that. We don't censor books. I mean, it's like, this is a culture conf. We're having book burnings, basically, the equivalent.
Yeah.
Anybody that doesn't goose step to the left-wing agenda. I mean, Amazon apparently is quietly censoring books that they don't like. I mean, I have about 15 or 16 books on Amazon. I'm just waiting to see whether or not they're going to be canceled. I'm sure they've already been shadow banned, just like my TikTok station and just like my YouTube. But, we have to, I think the response.
They shadow ban on TikTok? I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. My TikTok, I was gaining an average of 40 or 50 new subscribers a day. And then I went up to, for a period, I had some surges where I was getting like 1,000 a day.
Hey.
And then all of a sudden, the live stream was suspended for like a 7-day period. And by the way, my live stream had like 500-600 followers. I would go live. It was amazing. I go out every day for my exercise, my walk, and I do a little live streaming while I'm walking.
Well, what was your offense for being banned?
On that one, I think I was talking probably about the election. That's usually my big subject on TikTok.
Oh, no.
And so they suspended the live stream, and then I got it back, but now I only get like maybe 100 or 45 or 50 followers on the live stream. And the TikTok followers has trickled down to maybe 1 or 2 a day or even a week. So it seems to me that I'm being shadow banned on TikTok. That's the way it goes. I'm grateful that I have the station. It's interesting. I am able to do what I'm doing. I post a quick TikTok video every day. And what I'm doing is what I think a lot of people who are not goose-stepping to the left are doing right now. People who are not part of the culture conf regime. And that is that we are literally establishing alternative means of communication, alternative media. I mean, in my case, I have set up this new website, charlesmoscowitz.com. Please go there. You'll find all sorts of things to see and all sorts of things to do. And it's getting better. I'm working on it every day. And this is what other people are doing. I mean, there's all these alternative venues. There's, on the, as opposed to YouTube, there's Minds, there's Rumble, there's Gab, as opposed to Twitter. Parler is back. I'm back on Parler. I post my shows on Parler.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, Parler has come back, and other similar things. I mean, there's all these alternatives, and I think that what's happening is that over time, we are developing an alternative universe. I mean, we're literally. I mean, it's almost like two.
Yeah, well, that's happening, and they're getting the woke mob is getting so absurd that they're turning off their own, or what was previously their own.
How so?
Well, there are people that were, I suppose, members of good standing of the left that may have, God forbid, said the wrong thing and suddenly find themselves outside that. I mean, talking about TikTok videos, there was a guy that posted that Jesus was racist and point to a gospel passage, which of course is misinterpreted, about the Assyrian Phoenician women asking for something. And the whole point of that passage is that because of her persistence, her request was granted. But he makes a reference to we have children, i.e. the children of Israel, to worry about, and why should I give stuff to dogs? But it was hyperbole, it was obvious what the point was, and somehow the guy was making the statement that it was racist because the analogy was to dogs. And of course, the guy was some kind of soy boy individual, as you can expect and predict. But I'm enjoying some of this because it's getting so ridiculous that they're making it all burlesque on themselves.
I would think they would have liked that one because it's attacking Jesus. Isn't that fashionable for the left?
Well, it's disingenuous because they're all atheists.
That's what I mean.
So why are they even on that topic?
Well, religion is the enemy of this whole agenda. They want to replace religion with the state. And so, if you're going to denigrate Jesus, as long as you don't touch Islam, as long as you're just attacking Christianity and religious Judaism, you're fine.
But what I mean disingenuous is if you have someone that's not in it and has zero expertise attempting to criticize it, it loses a bit of gravitas, although the audience is so stupid, it probably doesn't matter, frankly.
Well, even some people on the left are having a little censorship. I recall a while back that David Pakman, who was a big left-wing guy, kind of a lightweight, with due respect to him, but he had some shows banned, and he went through an absolute meltdown over this.
And he thought he was such a good, card-carrying leftist.
Exactly. These are
off every box,
and he is. I mean, everyone's racist or sexist or homophobic or whatever. And I don't know what he said, but he was, and then he's, how could you do this to me? We need progressive voices, So.
Yeah, it breaks my heart when that happens.
Anyway, but so that's the world we're living in, and that's I forge forward. I mean, I feel better in a way not doing the show on YouTube because I was always worried about, if you say this, or if you go this way, or you go that way.
Well, I was worried that I was screwing up your show, and I don't even know what.
And who needs that kind of stress? I'm not doing this because I need to worry about some secret hand ready to chop my head off. You don't see the axe coming down. I mean, I'm just not. So to hell with them. I'm going to put shows up there when I think that it's not too controversial. But for the most part, I am now focused on all these other media venues that are carrying the show.
I think that's a great decision.
And I'm pretty confident that these venues are going to grow because I'm not the only one.
No, there's plenty of people that have, substantial followings that are doing this because they're just sick and tired of it. And
if they think they're going to stop talking about the election steal, they're way off base because Republicans are consolidating around that apparently an internal poll taken by the Republican committee found that they're going to very handily win the midterm, and that the Trump Republicans are dominant and they're getting more dominant, and that evidence is trickling out. It's like a drip, 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 drip that the election was indeed stolen. I don't know if you've seen the latest. This is out of, I actually put up a blog about this today. Let me just call it up. This is from Wisconsin. And it's, let me just see here, because I'm keeping a blog. By the way, if you go to charlesmoscowitz.com, you can click on the blog link, and I'm doing a blog every day. And so my blog today, I'm talking about evidence of possible ballot fraud in Wisconsin. This is a situation that's just breaking in the Wisconsin media. This isn't some, right-wing thing. It says that the latest story, according to the Gateway Pundit, which is on the right, but nevertheless, they quote the Wisconsin Spotlight, which is a more mainstream paper, is that former top Democratic operative Michael Spitzer Rubenstein was given the keys to the KI Center Ballroom in Green Bay, Wisconsin, where absentee ballots were stored and counted before Election Day. So get this. This guy was he was the head of this organization, this left-wing organization called the National Vote at Home Institute, that had received an enormous amount of money from Zuckerberg's front group, the Center for Tech and Civic Life. We know that Zuckerberg spent, what was it, like
$300 million. So
yeah, it's spreading, basically greasing the palms of people around the country, particularly in the battleground states, to do exactly what this guy Rubenstein did, which was—
How did he get the keys, though?
He got the keys, and it's an interesting story. He pressured the local clerk in Green Bay, Wisconsin, that he had this authorization, and then the left-wing mayor of Green Bay, who apparently there's now calls for him to resign, he authorized it as well, because they were supposed to go in and quote unquote cure ballots that might have had the wrong address.
That's so ironic, by the way. There is no more working class town in the country than Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So how did it become?
Well, the mayor there was playing ball with Zuckerberg's group. A lot of money involved. We don't know this, but the same thing. I think there was similar situations in Georgia. We could get into that with their Secretary of State. The point is that this guy was able to get the keys to this center and go in there several days before the election. And it's illegal. There are now calls for an investigation. Apparently today, the Wisconsin legislature is having a special meeting to discuss whether or not to do a full audit of the situation. They are discussing, that basically this room was breached, and that this Democratic operative, and he's got a long history of Democratic activism going all the way back. He's highly political, and he's the head of this group that is trying to cure the election, that they got the keys to this room. Now, it raises the question, not only in Wisconsin, because Wisconsin probably cast 3 million votes, maybe 4 million votes, and Biden technically only won the state by, I think, 10,000.
Oh, yeah, it was really close.
That is insignificant margin. I mean, that's a dead heat. So when you have that close an election, and you've got this guy, and apparently he was bragging that he'd done the same thing in Milwaukee, by the way, that he's got the keys to this room early and he's involved with counting ballots, that could have affected many thousands of ballots.
Yeah, well, the only problem with that, of course, is that as interesting as this is, it's all after the fact. And it's very reminiscent of a Super Bowl a couple of years ago, where there was no question that the victory was influenced by a bad call, which they admitted afterwards. But you know what? They didn't change who won the Super Bowl.
That's too late, yeah.
And maybe the media thinks that they're going to mollify the Trump crowd by saying, "Oh yeah, well you guys were right, but so."
Well, it is too late. We're not going to change the course of the election. Biden was sworn in, and he is the president, and I recognize that.
But here's the point.
Yeah.
It is good grounds. If anybody says, "Well, this is all conspiracy theory," no, it wasn't.
Well, that's right. We have to continue to investigate this, or else we're never going to have another free election in this country. And they're pushing a bill to basically codify the stealing. This H1 whatever it is, House resolution, which means that local municipalities are no longer going to be allowed to purge their voter rolls of people who had either passed away or who had moved out of the district. They're going to have a national voter ID ban. This is going to be basically they're going for the gold. I mean, they're grabbing.
I think though it's going to be declared unconstitutional.
Oh yeah, I mean it on its face.
Yeah.
At the same time, the Supreme Court did not declare as unconstitutional the fact that several states, including Pennsylvania, were changing voter laws without legislative approval.
Oh,
That's black and white in the Constitution, Article 2, Section 2. That and yet the Supreme Court did nothing. So
does
the Constitution matter?
The Constitution makes it very clear that the states are in charge of the election, and for all these phony balonies like Amy Barrett, now she can hang her hat on this, say, "Wow, it's clear law," and
I hope. Of course, they haven't hung their hat on much up until.
No. But they traditionally, I mean, in fairness, courts have been very reluctant to get involved with overturning elections.
Right, and that's what it's all about. It's all political. They didn't want to look at the actual evidence. They did not want to look at the law with regard to the Constitution.
But
they just didn't want to overturn an election that had been overturned.
Yeah, I think that this would be an easy one for them.
I hope so. I mean, it's terrible to think that it wouldn't be, but they have such incredible power now that they can decide what the Constitution says and doesn't say. And but the thing is that we have to keep up the pressure in terms of these investigations. This situation in Wisconsin, with this guy having the keys to the counting room, maybe a week before the election, that's something that probably has gone on in precincts
multiple cases
all around the United States. Especially, we can trace the money of where Zuckerberg put these millions, tens of millions of dollars. Who was getting the money? Which politicians were getting it? Which operatives were being paid to wheedle their way into these rooms with their special keys and do the counting under the quote integrity laws? I mean, we know that it was going on in Georgia, which was one of the most corrupt elections. And, it's just, again, I mean, I'm not going to stop following this story. There's another one coming out of apparently Illinois. Now I think that there were 6 people that are facing
corruption in Illinois.
Oh my, right, of course. We're facing voter fraud charges. This isn't as interesting because these are just individuals who had falsified and forged voter documents. That's not as bad because that kind of thing probably happens every 4 years or every 2 years. That's more conventional. But the business of Zuckerberg coming in and then these left-wing groups getting the keys and counting votes. I mean, the other one that's going on, and I've covered this, I think this is one of the reasons TikTok took me down. And I'm not going to get into specifics because I just turned on my TikTok app.
Oh, no. Oh, okay. Well, turn it off.
I couldn't help it. Maybe I should shut it off. Let me just, for the sake of TikTok, let's just say Windham County, New Hampshire.
Yeah.
You and I have talked about it. It's in all the newspapers in New Hampshire. Jeff Kuhner here in Boston has talked about it on WRKO. So this isn't just, this isn't some conspiracy theory.
No, it's fairly mainstream.
And we know what's going on in Windham County with regard to electronic voting. And they are doing a count of this as we speak. And, it might take another month, but gradually, drip, 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 the truth is coming out. Maricopa County in Arizona has now impounded 1.2 million ballots. They are being recounted. That's going to take another month. Whether or not that's going to be honest, I don't know. I mean, there's this guy, Hutton Pulitzer, whatever his name is, who is all over that. And he's one of the creators of the e-vote. He's a computer scientist. He says that they have to have a complete and total audit of this vote. There's resistance to that in Arizona, but there's some real tough people in Arizona, including the state senator Fincham, who are really fighting this, and they're really putting a spotlight on it. And,
well, this is in microcosm, I think, what happened in California. All right. California now is viewed by everybody. Well, it's a blue state, but It wasn't always like that.
No,
And
it was Reagan country.
and as recently as 2011, there was a so-called Republican governor with Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
But I'm from California, and I always remembered that the deal was that Northern California was always liberal. I mean, that was going back to the beginning.
Sure.
But Southern California wasn't. And suddenly it just became deep blue, and it had to be fraud. I mean, there's no other possible explanation how something could happen that quickly. And talk
Well,
about
even in the 2016 the 2016 election. I mean, I covered this for Newsmax magazine that and Hillary got something like 2 million votes there. An incredible number, and that the DNC or the state party were basically hiring undocumented immigrants. I want to be careful here.
Yes.
People who are not citizens to go out and engage in voter harvesting.
No, the harvesting originated in California.
That's right. They were going out and gathering. And by the way, harvesting is now going to be legal nationally if this bill passes, let me add. And they were basically, even now they admit that California was taking votes from homeless people who had no addresses. They did this in Atlanta as well. That's not legal. That's not legal. You have to be a citizen with a registered address to vote. Those are laws that go all the way back. Biden just signed an executive order giving the vote to not only ex-cons, which is something that you could argue they should have, but it's a state issue, not a federal issue. But even people while in prison.
Yeah, current felons, right.
That's right. They're going to get the vote, and they figure, they're going to vote Democratic.
I don't know if that's true.
I don't either, actually.
I don't know that criminals are necessarily liberal.
No, I would think that probably maybe that could backfire. But that's part of it. And
no one's ever done the survey. Because the two questions, excuse me, sir, are you a criminal? Yes. And
that's right. They have to vote. So that's the story on that. That's where we are. And I'm not going to stop covering it. I'm going to continue, and I know other people are too. Check out my website, charlesmoscowitz.com. And that's where I'm focusing my energy right now, because I think that maybe through that means I can do an end run around the shadow banners and the censors.
Now that's going to be very hard hitting. You're not going to hold back on that website, right?
No, I'm not. I'm going to get into anything and everything. It's going to be very interesting. I mean, look, ultimately they could pull the plug on that too, I suppose. I mean, they could pull the plug on anything. I mean, a little difference is that WordPress, I pay for it. It's not expensive. Anybody can get one. So I think that by the fact that I subscribe to it gives me a little margin of protection. I mean, they can't just come in and...
Traditionally, WordPress has not been politicized. They're very much into the pure content creation. They're very cognizant of the fact that nearly the one half of the websites in the world are based on WordPress. And it's just not in their interest to start, as the expression goes, pissing in the soup, that they have this thing going. And I've never seen anything like that with WordPress. And I've had sites on WordPress since it started.
Okay. So, and I don't really understand how to function on WordPress yet, and I'm not good with that. I actually had a guy help me do this that I hired through Fiverr, which is, by the way, pretty good. I mean, this guy from Pakistan, he did a great job. It didn't cost me much.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to set it up, I'm trying to get it to be friendly.
Well, you'll get used to the dashboard and the things you can do.
Yeah.
But the thing to remember is, and then the beauty of WordPress is that there's thousands of independent developers, which means that there are hundreds of thousands of what they call plugins to allow you, and no doubt your guy used some of them, to create the site in exactly the way you want it to be. And it's a very powerful tool.
Yes.
To get, and I'm talking about anything from a small mom and pop website to some very large sites.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, probably big businesses have them. So,
Yeah.
Mike, I'd appreciate it if you might take a little look at it and send me any thoughts you have, because
Sure.
it definitely needs a lot of work. I need design help. I mean, I'm not, again, this isn't my field, but, so far so good. I'm trying to figure out how to drive traffic to it.
Well, fortunately, there are free or modestly priced themes that can be imposed, which will create the whole design just by.
Oh yeah. Well, I think I have that down. I mean,
Yeah.
you might let me know what you think. I mean,
Sure,
I'm
absolutely.
trying to keep it real simple. The one thing I hate is looking at a website. It's so complicated. It looks all the bells and whistles. It looks good, but you don't know where the hell to go.
You know what's ironic about that?
Yeah.
The simplest website in the world is Google, right? You just have a little box, put in what you're searching. All right, here's the irony. Google Analytics, which is something for webmasters that is free, is intensely complicated to use. Intensely complicated.
That's probably because they don't want people to just know how to get around.
It's very, very difficult to use. The other program they have, which we were an original member, AdWords or ads.google.com.
Oh yeah.
People, they place ads, but if you get into the dashboard of that, there are well over 1,000 menu items that you can go into, whatever, to find.
Oh, I've been trying to get through that, and they are running ads on the site. I don't know if I'm going to make any money from that. I mean, frankly, I would like to figure out how to turn it into an e-commerce site. So we'll see. I mean, if I can get access to that, I'm not crazy about that. I might drop that. But right now there are ads appearing from.
Yeah, you can try everything and see what works for you. You got to be careful with some of those ad platforms because.
Oh yeah.
Debbie Schlossel, who now is not doing much on the website, she's doing a radio show daily out of North Dakota, of all places.
Sure.
But she would have ads that it was not very selective because she's, as many of the viewers know, is very pro-Israel and so on. Some pretty hardcore anti-Semitic material would come up on these ads, and it wasn't filtering it out very well. They've improved that, but you really have to watch what kind of ads come up.
Well, I'll keep an eye on that one.
Yeah. But that's good that you're getting into that, because that seems like the most foolproof platform.
Well, I mean, ultimately, this is what Alex Jones did, and I'm not endorsing Alex Jones. I think he's had problems.
Yeah.
I interviewed him years ago, back when I was on the American Freedom Network, and I really didn't hit it off too well with him even then.
Well, the trouble with him and many of these people is when you get hung up on the unified theory of everything,
right?
Then it becomes impossible. I mean, even one of the guys that I quote frequently in my articles has just decided that viral load and immune problems is the reason everything's bad in the world. And while it's certainly involved with a lot of stuff, there's what's that line from Shakespeare? There's more to life than what's in your philosophy, Horatio. So it's but when people get hung up on one issue, it's bad. I've seen it.
Oh yeah, it distorts everything, and everything goes through this very, very kind of defined funnel. And he got into trouble, and should have, when he was talking about like the shooting, the Sandy Hook shooting as a false flag. That's not good, and he was sued for that, and should have been sued. But
no, it was terrible.
Yeah, but I don't think that therefore he should be removed from.
No, but it was just a bad decision on his.
Bad decision, a stupid thing for him to have done, and he paid a price for it and should have. But so there's a lawsuit, but that doesn't mean you completely,
Yeah.
utterly remove somebody from ever existing again. I mean, there's a system in place to deal with that. It's called libel and it's called
Yeah.
slander. But either way, and he's done some interesting things. But since he was removed, he was the first one to be completely taken down. He has set up, and in a way, he's a model for this whole platform with his own cloud servers, his own everything, and he's got, in a way, he's a pioneer for this kind of separate universe. I'd even say the same thing for Christopher Lydon very early on here in Boston.
Hmm.
Left-wing liberal. He was on NPR, so the left of anyone. He's brilliant, really smart guy. Fired from NPR, mainly because they had a contract disagreement. And he was one of the first people to set up an online program.
Wow.
And he sort of set the model for it. And so I've kind of kept an eye on what he's doing. And, he does his open source and he does well. He makes money. He's got sponsors. He's got all the advertising and he's got all the guests that he would otherwise have. And, he's kind of like a model for how to do this. So it can be done, liberal or conservative. If you have been banned, there are ways to go about reestablishing. It's not going to be as big, but look, I mean, my aspirations are quite modest anyways. I mean, I would just like to be able to reach a point where I can make a reasonable living and I can have a reasonable level of influence with people that are interested and nothing more.
Well, at least with the online world now, you have a way of creating this. One of the first guys that got banned, which is before the internet became a prominence, it was there, but it wasn't what it is now. I don't know if you remember Sam Francis.
Yeah. Yep.
Very conservative writer.
Mm-hmm.
But here was the fatal flaw. He took surveys and found that he was heavily followed by people that, how can we put this, tended toward white supremacy.
Okay.
Not so much racist, but old line, as they used to call them, little old ladies in tennis shoes, and this kind of stereotype.
Mm-hmm.
And he started catering toward that, which was a bad mistake, and then gradually got kicked off of, they weren't called platforms then,
right?
Newspapers and syndication that he had, and ended up a pretty embittered guy, and sadly died soon after.
Oh.
But you can't go by that. I mean, I'll give you one silly example from our own gas detection website. We are getting a disproportionately ridiculous number of views on a knowledge-based article that I wrote that had to do with how the swabs that are being used in COVID-19 testing are sterilized with ethylene oxide.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I mean, there's no secret. That's what they do.
Sure.
So some lunatic found this article and wrote a blog called "The COVID Swabs Will Give You Cancer," because he read somewhere that ethylene oxide is carcinogenic. And then they linked to my knowledge-based article. And I'm looking at the logs of my website, and I'm getting 500, 600 views of one obscure knowledge-based article. And I'm getting so many views of this that it's crazy because it's more than the whole page. And so I mentioned Google Analytics and some of these other things, Masomo and some of these other programs that you can analyze web traffic. I finally figured out it was coming from this posting. So
you have clickbait basically.
Yeah, and I didn't even know it. I didn't even know
it. But what you're describing with Sam Francis, I mean, that can happen to people. I know that also describes Joe Sobran. I don't know if you met.
Oh yeah, the same story.
He went down, frankly, an anti-Semitic foxhole in a deep way. I debated him,
Yeah.
And he just went way off the deep end.
I don't think he was personally really
No,
anti-Semitic.
but he just started with some conspiracy theories that
Yeah.
were pretty, I think that he was influenced by Douglas Reed's book, The Mysteries of Zion. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Oh, I heard of that a long time ago. Yeah.
Very anti-Semitic and openly so, with really unsubstantiated charges, not only against Israel but against Judaism. That I mean, they can be refuted pretty easily. But his book had a big impact, and I think that Sobran was influenced by that.
Well, I mean, Sobran fell down that rabbit hole.
Yeah,
because certainly, and you know the guy that just goes nuts with this is what does he call himself? Brother so and so.
Oh yeah, Brother Nathaniel.
Yeah.
Oh, he's terrible. I actually wanted to interview him, and
Well, he was formerly Jewish.
he was. And you know something? I maybe I'm getting a little contradictory here, but quite frankly, I do think that there's somebody who probably should have been banned from YouTube, only because it was more than just his anti-Jewish and anti-Semitic theories, but he was so vile about it, using like words like kike, and he's so angry. I mean, he was one of these guys. It's like Torquemada from the Spanish.
And the double irony was, there was the most Jewish-looking guy I've ever seen in my life.
He was. Well, that's like Torquemada,
Yeah.
who was the conquista, who was the carried out the Spanish Inquisition. He was a former Jew.
Yeah.
And he became ultra, I mean, Ferdinand and Isabella were uncomfortable. I mean, he was pushing for like a complete, so yeah, I mean, that sort of describes him. And
well, the Jews were kicked out in 1492.
they were, thanks to Torquemada. He's the one that was carrying out the auto da fe, and
but he went down the rabbit hole also because look, I could make an argument, quote unquote, and I'd start with the Rosenbergs, and I'd start with Leon Trotsky, and you could mention all these people that were nominally Jewish,
right?
And create an entire history if you wanted to, but the problem is it doesn't explain everything.
Well, I mean, I've had this debate with Dr. E. Michael Jones, who I actually respect, except in this one area where he's I think stepped in it.
Yeah.
And I point out, look, I could give you, I could raise you one by giving you a list of Roman Catholics who have done just the same stuff, if not worse. I mean, it's not whether they worship on the Saturday or the Sunday. It has more to do with, in a sense, they're all heretics. I mean, these are people who are rebelling against, their faiths. This isn't part of, this isn't a conspiracy theory by Judaism or by, in the case of Catholicism, I mean, there's stuff about the Jesuits. Fine. But, that's not where the focus should be. The focus should be on people who are rebelling against the Vatican and against the Torah.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is how people get hung up. And I think Sobran was a fairly sad example of that.
Yeah, exactly.
He wrote some good stuff, but then just got off on this. And it's almost like you wanted to slap him across the face and say, look, you're headed down the wrong pathway with this.
Well, that's what happened from, because I used to admire his column, and then he went off this. Same thing with E. Michael Jones when he started.
Yeah.
I remember he had the book Degenerate Moderns, which I thought was brilliant.
Yeah.
And he wrote about the horror genre. He's written about cultural things. Amazing thinker, brilliant man. And then he got off on this tangent, and it kind of like, to me, it was like painting a mustache on the Mona Lisa. I mean, it really, and I even had him on recently, and I still admire him, but I'm like.
Have you ever questioned him about that, though? That why he went down this rabbit hole?
Totally. I mean, I've totally let him have it on that. We've had. I don't make mince words about it. It's like it completely contradicts. He's written a book about logos, which is, of course, a Catholic concept, a Christian concept, and a Jewish concept. We have a slightly different understanding of it. But then he. And I brought it up to him, and the subject makes his hair go on fire. I mean, he absolutely has a meltdown on that. But that's.
You have to be very careful if you're in the public eye or you write a lot, to not get hung up on one particular subject, and I could see how that happens.
Well, it's kind of happened to me occasionally. I mean, I'm hung up on this business of the election.
Yeah.
I've been hung up on the issue of communism. I mean, I've written several books on it. So we all have our areas where we go a little deep, you know.
Yeah, sometimes, you got to shift gears
Yeah.
and write about something else, or it gets
a little funky because you lose touch with the bigger picture. Anyway, Mike, but I kind of got to run. So
okay.
I appreciate you joining me again. I want to ask people to check out the new website, charlesmoscowitz.com. And, that's where I'm focusing all of my programming and my archives and my live streams and everything else.
Do they have a platinum membership yet where you can get extra
I have to learn how to
content?
do that.
Yeah.
Again, I'm sort of just still kind of like rummaging around trying to figure it out. But check it out. Maybe send me a note. Let me know what you think of it. Any suggestions, pro or con, and as I evolve the thing. So
good.
All right, Mike. Listen, thanks so much as always. What's your latest article about?
Well, I'm glad we're not on YouTube because the latest article, the title of the article is "The H Drug and the I Drug."
Well, you can say it here.
Yeah, well, that's the title of the article, though, was with the initials because
we know what that means.
What happened, and we just go into the mounds of data showing the efficacy of that. And I'm only going to tell you viewers one thing: India has 1/10 the COVID death rate of the United States. 1/10.
Yeah, something. Another little thing I saw about that. And this is the European, I think the London news, is that one of the reasons why the United States has the highest rate is because we're too fat. It has a lot to do with.
Yeah. Well, India has no fat people.
That's right.
And it uses a lot of ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine.
That's right.
And they did have brief lockdowns at the very beginning, but they abandoned those. When I last checked, with a country of essentially 4 times the population of the U.S., the death count is 158,000.
Incredible.
4 times the population. So,
all right, Mike. So we'll have to keep an eye on it. Somebody should write a book. I've thought about writing a book about hydroxychloroquine and some of these alternative medicines and the history of that and how that's worked. And that's something that probably Amazon wouldn't publish it, but it should be done. All right. So, Mike, I'll talk to you soon.
We will see you next time.
You bet. Thanks.